Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Lemonade Stand. I have been sitting alone in this room for 1 week because you guys went on a trip without me. And I've been real sad.
And it was an awesome trip.
And I've just been waiting for you guys to text me that you're going to show up, and no one's here. So I've just been working. I have a lot of slides ready to go.
You waited here the whole time for us?
Yes.
Oh, that's
I've been
awesome.
surviving on our snacks and our drinks. And apparently you guys went on a really cool trip to discover something to do with autonomous something. I don't know deeper. I'm going to be the dumb guy and ask you questions. And I want you guys to explain what's going on. So what the hell's going on in the world?
That's right, Brandon. Do you know that cars are going to drive themselves soon?
Well, yes, that we do know. We've covered that
Thanks
before.
for watching. No, so Aiden and I have been really interested in autonomous vehicles, and we had a chance recently to go and visit a company called Applied Intuition that is working on making autonomous vehicles of all sorts around the world. And to give a kind of intro of maybe why you should care at all, we've talked about things like Tesla or Waymo self-driving, but broadly, autonomous...
Do these cars have wheels, or is that...
No, that's the new thing. It's all flying.
That's the approach of their business. They said wheel, it's out.
Well, it's one wheel, like those weird skateboards. It's like super dangerous, but cool.
It's a gigantic automated mining truck, but it's just one giant wheel at the bottom.
You invent the best self-driving, but you're non-negotiable.
Yeah.
And it has to
They're
so it's more dangerous.
They're already sending it out to Casey Neistat for a review.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
All right. So, okay.
So let's kind of open with just before we talk about this specific company, why, again, does autonomous vehicles matter? We've talked about this a little bit in the past, but I think there's two real arguments for this. One, and the biggest, is safety. There are so many people that die every year from car crashes. In 2023 in America, there's 6 million reported crashes. 2.4 million people are injured. It's the number one reason that people go to the emergency room. There's 3.8 million ER visits a year. That's from the CDC. It causes hundreds of billions of dollars of economic damage. And you might be wondering, Brandon, are all these people sober when they do this?
I was wondering that.
Yeah. No,
When
they
I
are.
drive in LA and I look around, I think these can't get me sober.
40,000 people die every year in America from car accidents. That is one person killed every 13 minutes, 5 people are injured every minute, and 1,000 of those are children. Half of those involve people speeding or drunk driving.
What about texting? I was driving on the way to this podcast studio and I saw someone texting in their car on the highway.
I know, because you texted me right after and said, this is crazy.
I texted a picture of it. I texted you a live stream. I was streaming at the time.
This is in America. The number of deaths and destruction. I mean, the reason car insurance goes up in price, the reason that, I mean, like everybody knows somebody who's been affected by this in some way. It is truly unbelievable the amount of damage and destruction that happens through people driving cars. And the reality is that a lot of the autonomous vehicle technology is proving to be much safer. Now, there's an asterisk around that. It depends on the information you get. For example, Tesla doesn't share a lot of information, but Waymo does, much safer than an average human. And so there's, I think, a real safety imperative. And not only that, there's other industries besides, a person driving a car on the freeway. There's things like construction. There's things like mining, where you use huge vehicles in very dangerous environments. And those industries, mining, construction, are some of the most dangerous they're incredibly dangerous. So making vehicles that are autonomous and safer. You've got it locked down?
For most people, yeah, but I'm like a little tougher. I'm built a little different.
When you get on a big rig at a
big
quarry,
rig,
when you're mining for
two
cobalt.
pickaxes, I get one in each hand and I spin them like this and then
Okay.
So for me, it's not a problem, but I see what you're saying.
Yeah. For average
I just
people.
feel like you have to add the asterisk, otherwise it's going to feel weird.
For people other than Brandon, it can be extremely dangerous. And for people other than Brandon, there's also, there's crazy things like there's a Netherlands study showed that 20% of traffic is just phantom traffic jams, where there's no actual reason for there to be traffic. It's like human beings.
Just for fun?
Yeah.
Well, no, it's when somebody starts and stops.
Oh, just someone is slow, and then it causes
a backup that exists on the freeway for a long period of time. And then a University of Illinois study showed that only 5% of cars need to be automated, where you're stopping a lot of that human error that, where somebody starts and stops and causes a whole problem. You need a very small number of cars to be automated before that goes away. So there's a lot of really interesting from the safety angle, as well as, and we'll get into this a little bit later, the jobs angle, where obviously this is a big challenge in terms of replacing jobs in some industries. And in other industries, there aren't enough people working these things, and it will help. Some crazy things I learned about in the U.S. mining industry, 50% of people in our mining industry are going to retire in the next 10 years. In Japan, there's just a straight up shortage of truckers. They do not have enough people to work. They had to make laws to stop people from working themselves to death. And because of that, the whole infrastructure is like straining because they do not have enough people.
Or in industries like farming, where the average age of a farmer is often above 55, above 60, depending on the countries that you look at. And these are not jobs that a new generation of people are looking to step into. So automating them is considered a part of the solution.
Yeah. So all of that leads to...
we can make farming cool for Gen Z.
Gen Z doesn't want to farm.
I'm just saying, if we made the right ad campaign that made farming like sick.
Which is weird. We did a PSYOP called Stardew Valley, and they still won't go work in Iowa.
I guess if Stardew Valley
making
didn't do
corn.
It, but I'm wondering if like Farm Talk could like get, if you make that seem cool enough.
All of this interest in automation, sans Farm Talk. I reached out to a friend of mine named Vikram, who you might know from Smash at Xanadu 249 grand finals.
Of course, I was going to say.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, he crushed in that grand finals.
And he did lose, but
he crushed expectations to get there.
Together was a big deal.
That was crazy. You let me finish.
I heard that he'd been working in machine learning, specifically on vehicles, for a long time. And I reached out last year and I was like, Vikram, can you just tell me about your job? And it transformed into this full-on invite to come tour Applied Intuition and its facilities.
And they paid you a bunch of money to say exactly what you wanted to say, right?
Yeah, but we're not supposed to talk about that on the show.
To be clear, this is not sponsored. We were not paid.
Going from hitting up my friend blindly about his job, we quickly learned that Applied Intuition is a company making basically an operating system that is meant to work across a bunch of different form factors of things, not just vehicles in the traditional sense, but things like a robot, for instance. And this one operating system allows them to create a bunch of different apps that works across these different vehicles, including self-driving or like autonomous driving as the main one that we talked about the most.
Yeah. I think that the real big pitch here would be, instead of every individual car company trying to reinvent self-driving on their own, it's like, okay, what if you have a company that can make a thing that slots into like literally any vehicle? And that's
NVIDIA's trying to do that, right? Or you get to that later?
NVIDIA is sort of trying to do that, except they're really selling the hardware stack, where they're saying you use our chips and then our software. We'll talk about it a little bit, but what Applied Intuition is trying to do is say, hey, all these vehicles that need all of these different disparate computers, it can now be under a single operating system, makes it way simpler, and then you can use our driving thing on top.
So if I have a
NVIDIA's.
2017 beat to shit Honda Fit, can I install Applied Intuition and it can drive it?
We literally asked them something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Aiden, what did we do with Applied Intuition?
Well, they gave us a tour of their garage and an interview with their CEO to ask the most pressing questions that we had about how automation across the board works in this industry. In this episode, we're going to just show you everything that we got to ask and experience. Different type of episode than normal, but we hope you guys enjoy. You have maybe a company like Tesla, a company like Waymo. They've been working on automated driving forever, and they're basically working in this very like specific environment of like just driving on the street with like fixed set of rules that you're supposed to operate around. And that has taken a long time with just a handful of models of vehicles, basically.
Yep.
But this is, in the grand sense, everything, everywhere. But how is that a practical approach to like automate everything at the same time in so many different environments?
I think that's the reason it makes it practical. So the alternative case is you just focus on one vertical in one way. And there are a lot of players that have actually come and gone. We remember the ones that are alive today. But there's many others that spent, say, billions of dollars on R&D to try to get to that point. And at some point, the billions will stop coming. And that's why they'll stop. In our case, when you work across all these different platforms, you continuously build the same platform, you can then build a real business around it. Because that means work in one area could help subsidize work in the other. And if you have enough of these verticals, that's how you create the real platform. Then.
Yeah, I think I can understand like the reason of
the business
having the business, like having everything consolidated. I think maybe this is a stupid question. Like all of the amount of data that you need to do like to operate a vehicle autonomously in all these different environments seems like it would be extraordinary. And I'm wondering like how do you supplement? How do you collect that?
They have different conditions as well.
Yeah.
Imagine if you're in the field or you're in a mining site. there's actually can be restrictions on, are there going to be particular pedestrians or other people or other vehicles or a dog? So you don't have to think about the 100% case of this is every possible potential future, because the failure mode or the exit case is you just stop. If you're on a highway going 65, you can't just stop.
Yeah, fair.
Which means, though, for a lot of these off-road cases, it is a bit safer in that regard. Which means even if you don't necessarily have hundreds of millions of miles of data, you can still make something that is relatively good, can solve the use cases that you have at hand, and then allow you to still collect data to make it better over time. I think the pitfall we don't want to be in is build a perfect solution and then go find the market for it. It's the market already exists, so kind of like grow alongside with it. And the technology that we have today is in a good enough spot where it can still satisfy the needs. The other piece of it, when you compare it to other AV players that exist today, it is the technology inflection point argument. Like the same thing is happening with language right now, or with voice data, et cetera. We've founded a model architecture that scales with data and scales with compute. So now let's throw data and compute at the problem. And that's why we have data collection fleets across the globe. Not just for cars, we also have data collection for off-road modalities, other on-road modalities. And that way you can build this better and better model.
So to put that simply, you're finding that you can make models that apply across these different industries. Like you've been able to make it work, basically.
Yeah, and it's funny. And like in the industry right now, people are talking about this as like general world models or world foundation models and things like that. We're basically doing that. We just don't say it in that way. We just tend to focus on what's the use case. And for us, that use case is making physical systems that can do actions autonomously.
Yeah, so essentially, like we use the same system across everything. So what we learn in mining today, we can apply in automotive tomorrow. So they all kind of benefit from each other. It's something that helps with automotive, might definitely help with mining later on, or trucking. All of these things are like interconnected. And in the same way that multimodal like LLMs function, it's the same with our technology.
Yeah. The other fun fact, especially about the types of customers we work with, is most of them have actually worked across these different verticals in their history as a company. Like most automotive companies were defense companies 100 years ago. And a lot of them have industrial arms. So they actually are used to these kinds of problems and used to trying to have shared learnings, but they haven't so far.
Yeah, so in this tour, what I thought was particularly interesting is them confidently saying, oh yeah, we can make a system that works across all vehicles, because I just would not have intuitively thought that a tractor software could work on something else. And as we talked with other folks at lunch, like outside of this recording, it sounds like that just really is the case. Like of the past couple years, there's been a major change in the way that companies have been sort of like designing their self-driving systems. We talked about Tesla and some major changes they had to do, and they actually apparently have kind of lost their competitive advantage because the way that they were building their systems was actually kind of shit, and now they're reforming it over the last couple of years, which has allowed everybody else to catch up. But very like unintuitive to me that you could sort of have the information from all of these different cars or vehicles.
They all got wheels. How different could they be?
No, they don't. There's boats. I don't know if you were listening. They actually, that's like literally the point
planes,
of what I'm saying.
Drones, boats. So many of them
They all
don't have
got
wheels.
Toasters, you said?
That's
But one thing it was interesting. One thing they did do like Tesla, if you guys remember, one of our first episodes was this comparison between Waymo's approach to autonomous driving and Tesla's approach to autonomous driving. And we recapped how Tesla is approaching like using cameras instead of the LiDAR sensors that Waymo has on them, right?
Yeah.
And in the tour, it was shown as like their primary way forward is something similar to Tesla, is installing cameras and not LiDAR as the main way they're going to be providing autonomous driving for most of these vehicles.
Yeah. One more question on this. So presumably there are a lot of sensors in order to make this thing be able to do autonomous driving. Where are those? Like, what exactly needs to be added on to something like this for it to be able to? Yeah,
so in this case, we'll actually show you a car later as well that has all the sensors, 7 cameras, really, at the end of the day. So it's a camera-only system, primarily, that allows you to do L2++ based driving.
Yeah.
I think that vehicle actually has it.
Oh,
so
cool.
We can just go there. So
What a segue, Doug.
What can we say? So there's a few examples. For example, camera here, camera there, camera on the other side.
I mean, this is 3 cameras, right? Or do you consider this 1 camera? I'm just seeing lenses everywhere.
Technically 3 in that sense.
Okay.
Yeah. And Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So we tend to have more than we need in the case of testing, because you just have more information that you can do something interesting with. In a production case, 7 is the de facto, another camera there, another set of cameras here,
Whoa.
and then 2 back here.
And so this amount of cameras would be able to run the autonomous system.
That is correct.
Man. With these sensors, I guess I'm surprised by how few there are compared to something like a Waymo, which has 26 or something, whatever it is, I forget the number. And also they have LiDAR. What's like general overview of why you guys feel like you only need this many sensors and only cameras?
Yeah, so that's also the big debate between L2++ systems, which think of it as driver assist systems, versus L4 systems, which is full driver disengaged related systems. The other thing to realize is a lot of the way in which we've thought about building the stack is utilizing transformer-based architectures or an end-to-end architecture that goes from signals in to control outputs, which means from a pure camera-based system, you could actually get to realistic driving behavior, whereas before, you'd have to have all these submodules or subcomponents that constitute your driving stack, and each of those would have to work sequentially. So when you compare what you need to do, only now can a true camera-only system be built and scaled, which is why we ended up doing that today. So if you have, say, many LiDARs, many radars, many cameras on your system, we're not saying that won't work. But what we believe is that's not a cost-effective way really to deploy a vehicle if we want to do so at scale.
Gotcha.
And we believe we can hit the same performance guarantees with the same level of redundancy without it.
This maybe will be too technical, but what was the key difference between we don't think cameras are enough to now we think cameras are enough? Like what changed that caused that confidence?
I think a lot of it was it being proven out. Tesla's an example. The Chinese ecosystem is another example of there being many different OEMs globally that show that it's possible.
Okay.
And a lot of it is that effect where once one person does it, everyone else sees that that path is there and they can continue down that route. You may see, for example, front-facing LiDARs, radars, et cetera, as redundancy on vehicles. All of that is still very much TBD, but you should generally expect that the form factor of sensors to become simpler over time. Whereas before, we wanted to get as much data and as much sensory information as possible to make the best decision we can. So that's the evolution of self-driving really over the last few years.
That makes sense. And then is this same amount of sensors, the idea is this can also get to L4 at some point, or would that require an upgrade? And for folks listening, L4 would be the point that a human is not involved with the driving at all.
The thesis is that it could evolve and get to that point.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, one thing to add on to that quick, I think it came up later on in the day, is that they aren't opposed to installing LiDAR on vehicles, but it does not seem as like the main way that they're going to provide autonomous driving at scale. So like they could, if a company came to them and was like, we want you to install LiDAR on a vehicle for us, they could take that approach. But the camera system that Tesla also uses is their default way of handling autonomous driving.
Yeah. Then another interesting piece we see in this garage, you'll see in a second, is like the typical car has like 100 computers in it, which is not something I really realized. Like every piece of a car is like often a contracted out piece of computer, like a mini, for example, like the braking system is like its own little computer. And then same with the steering wheel. And then same with any like visual panels and whatnot. And so what's kind of happened with car development is that the whole industry has become this weird fragmented, like 100 different computer systems inside of a single thing.
Yeah, I think Perry was saying before we started recording the episode is that all of these electronic components in modern cars right now have their own little proprietary operating systems and things, and they're not really designed to perfectly work with each other.
Yeah. So in this next clip, you'll see basically what a car is currently looking like. And it's literally becoming an issue with modern cars of how many computers and the weight of the wires because of just how much shit is being crammed into every car. And then what it could look like if, in theory, you have a sort of unified system.
This is a real live car, I think.
Not a real live car, but almost a real live car. So this is garage one of a few actually just around this campus here. This is where we have a lot of different vehicle types we're going to show you around. So right here are two different vehicle rigs. Instead of you testing on a live car all the time, we don't want to do that. So we try to emulate it as close as possible. On the left-hand side over there is what a car looks like today. So let's actually start with that.
Cool.
So this is literally the guts and innards of a car. We were talking about it right before, but it's the equivalent of you building a PC without a proper box around it. It's just a bunch of wiring, ECUs, a mix and match of everything you can think about. You can even look on the inside if you want, just to see how messy it is. So if you've ever dented your car or broken off a piece of it, this is what you'll see inside.
Wait, so how does this, are you going to one particular car manufacturer and getting the insides of a particular model of car? Or you said earlier, you're sourcing these from a ton of different places and then building it.
So when someone builds a car, they may need to get all these different components from separate places. Say the backup camera versus the infotainment screen versus what controls your trunk. And there could be maybe 150 of these things inside of a vehicle, all controlled by some compute module, but that compute module has to then interact with the entire rest of the system. So now imagine you have 150 different things that you all need to make interoperable and kind of work together, and that's where you get this. That's why you have additional wiring everywhere. And that's why there's redundancy in said wiring. That's why everything looks a little bit different, even from a design perspective, sizing perspective, reliability perspective. And when someone ships a car, they have to make sure everything works together and will continue to work for the next 10, 15 years.
Something I'm curious about. So if this is the sort of like guts and frame of a car, what needs to get added to what would have been a traditional car? What are the pieces that you guys are adding that wouldn't have been there otherwise?
So a lot of it is actually we're simplifying it to some degree. So if you look at this side, this is what the car could look like. And the reason it's a lot simpler is instead of there being, say, 150 different compute modules, you can simplify that, not to one, but maybe a few modules in different zones on the vehicle. So instead of all connecting to each other in this interconnected fashion, imagine they all go to a central box or set of boxes, and those boxes have significantly better compute that can do more interesting things. That could be running the latest and greatest edge models to do something like an AI-assisted voice assistant. That could be everything from controlling HVAC in the car. So that's a big piece of it. You just simplify what you need to actually do in the vehicle.
This isn't just about, I think coming into like automation, vehicles, people think about self-driving, but this isn't just about that. This is about like controlling a bunch of different aspects of your vehicle.
This is what I call the compute and electrical architecture of the entire car to run anything software related on a car. Autonomy is just one example of one piece of software that could run on a car.
Okay, that totally makes sense. Because I think that, I come in and I remember seeing this in a video before, and it's the car without the wheels. How are they automating the driving?
No,
but
it's everything else, right?
Sorry, my mistake. It does have wheels. I shouldn't have.
Kind of wheels, right? But it's everything else. It could be how we control this using a mobile application.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's now a cool thing for people to integrate into cars. It could be the infotainment screen in and of itself. And each of these need also better compute at the end of the day. So if we take what's happening in like the broader LLM space as a comparable, how everyone's focusing on compute, data, and the right architecture to do the right things there, it's the exact same approach, but now physical.
So am I correct in understanding that as a pretty layman car guy, saying this version, the traditional car has many different electronic components, basically?
Correct.
Okay, I guess I didn't think about that. Do you know, are there like numbers of how many of these like individualized systems are being pulled out in order to kind of pull it into one?
There's about 150 on this example.
Oh my God.
Of different systems. That's why if you look, like you just see one view of it, but if you look around, even on the side, you'll see all these different peripheries of what exists. And on here, I don't remember the exact number, but it's say around 5 to 10 is a good example of how many different modules you can reduce this down to.
So for an OEM, how hard is it to go from this very complex looking thing to this very complex but simpler looking thing?
It's been difficult because over the last 10 years, that's all what they've been trying to do.
Okay.
It's how do you actually simplify the car? Because there's many advantages. One example is weight. Everything on there is a few additional pounds, which can matter if you're buying a car, using a car. To another example is if you have 150 different modules and say something goes wrong, how do you actually fix it?
Yeah.
Like right now you have to take your car back to servicing, you leave it there for 3 weeks. You may get it fixed, you may not. Who knows? But imagine if you could just do a software update, similar to what exists for a Tesla today, for any other type of vehicle. So a lot of this is, if you get the right foundation, anything that is software on a vehicle can now be built and deployed and updated in a better way, whether you're testing it or also once it's on the road for 20 years. And I think that's the thing people don't realize is this stuff will be on the road for a long time. So you better make sure that you're kind of future-proofing.
I'm kind of wondering, like the software in this case, I assume is all proprietary. Like that's the value of the company. I wouldn't be able to like launch my own homebrew software on the vehicle, probably, or
probably not a production car, yeah, but like I don't think it's as complicated as you probably think of it as. In general, this is just a giant moving computer.
Yeah.
Really, at the end of the day, without it being a desktop in the back of a car, and that's actually to its benefit. And if that is the case, that means you can build software in the ways that you probably think about building software today that a lot of industrials historically have not been able to do.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty fascinating, seeing the difference of a car. And again, if you're an audio listener, like this is just physically much less stuff. So it's pretty interesting. Even just setting aside this particular company, Applied Intuition, like, across the industry, a lot of car manufacturers are dealing with this. And everybody kind of has this question of, it's almost like the Android or cell phones, 10, 20 years ago, where it used to be that every phone manufacturer had their own operating system. It was this awful fragmented thing where, Samsung and Nokia, everybody's making their own operating system for everything, and integrating other apps is this major problem. So even setting aside Applied Intuition, the idea of, people building sort of their own solutions and that can drop into any car is something that's really, really valuable, I think, rather than the idea of like literally every car company and every tractor company, every boat company is trying to do this themselves simultaneously. So I thought that was pretty interesting of how much you can simplify a modern car if you have kind of one operating system.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust John Deere self-driving. I don't know if they got the best engineers working on that.
You know what I think is really funny is even like on the lower scale of the apps that they were talking about that you could launch, you could have something like, an assistant that walks you through a solution that you would otherwise be looking in like an owner's manual for. Yep. I was like, oh, that's like pretty, that's pretty helpful. But then they had like a theater mode where they, all the lights like went down in the car, and then Tron came on the screen. Yeah. And then we're just watching Tron while like the lights of the car augment the movie and the sound. And then we went over to the...
You guys were getting high in the Tron car? You didn't invite me?
Yeah, we hotboxed it.
You guys were hotboxing the Tron car?
Crazy.
With CEOs, and you didn't invite me?
The important thing is that this tech can go into your toaster. Your toaster can have Tron mode, okay? Your boat can have Tron mode.
Go to Patreon if you want to see the footage of us hotboxing the tractor with the CEO. No, but we went over, I thought it was like a silly question, but we went over the tractor later, and I was like, can you run theater mode on the tractor too?
Yeah.
And they were like, well, I mean, I guess, yeah. I don't think they're concerned about that as like the primary market for the farmer who watches Tron.
I guess farmers don't enjoy Tron. I guess farmers can enjoy a good movie.
Fine, they can.
Out of touch Silicon Valley elites.
Friday Night Lights mode. Okay, we'll activate it. Yeah,
there we go.
So this is. I think this is just particularly interesting to see an example of how the whole industry could sort of make strides, and not just Tesla is doing this, Waymo is doing this, which I think is cool. It is worth noting though, there's obviously other players in this industry as well. So I forget if we mentioned it, but Nvidia is trying to do their own self-driving stack that they can drop into a car, but that's going to be sort of different than an operating system. There are companies that are trying to make like simulation tooling, which is what Applied Intuition started at, actually.
Nvidia was doing that too. I remember they'd have these damn self-driving cars clogging up the parking lot. You couldn't park. And they would have all the different models of car they were working with.
Yeah.
And then they did these digital... They replicated the whole city of San Jose digitally, and then they were just running it a million times. That's
and that's again. So Nvidia is doing this, like Applied Intuition is doing this. Obviously, Tesla has it for their own cars, Waymo for their own cars. So there's a lot of people who are all doing this. And then again, the question is like, how could you propagate this to many different companies? And if a company could successfully make something where it's like, hey, we can retrofit a car, you only need this number of sensors, and then you get access to a broad range of apps, or to put it differently, you have a software layer that any other company can come in and put their apps on. What we could see is very quickly sort of all cars around the world, all vehicles, tractors, all these things, suddenly having the ability to just like plug and play different autonomous software. And that could be the software that Applied Intuition is doing. It could be others. There's this is a way that you see autonomous vehicles become approachable or accessible beyond just Waymo or Tesla. It's this type of thing.
This episode of Lemonade Stand is brought to you by Truewerk.
Well, you guys know I've been extremely satisfied with the Truewerk product, the pants
I do
and
know
the
that.
shorts that they've given us.
I do know
They're
that.
great.
And you actually, you bought yours, which is
Oh, you're
funny.
wearing them this time.
I'm wearing them.
Wow.
And but
And
they
I like them
because they kept sending free stuff that I would keep for myself.
This
because
is
I do
true,
like it.
by
This
the
is
way.
actually true.
And they have these awesome pants that have like these built-in like knee pads, sort of. It's more cushiony around the knees.
Sure.
And I like the way they look and feel. And I've been keeping them to myself.
No, I had to buy these myself, but the one pair I got of the free ones we provided, you threw at me at the office and said, "Here, you can have." You like, take this. He tossed me the scrap.
And I had kept
What do
them.
you do
I'd
with
already
them?
worn them.
Kept the
I'd already
button.
worn them several
You already
times.
worn them. You threw me used pants.
But they're
I
good
bought
for
my
a
own.
bunch of different weather conditions, different environments. If you're a hard worker, Truewerk are great for you. If you're a podcaster, Truewerk are great for you.
You go out camping. Go out hiking with them. They're great.
I actually wore mine hiking 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, they're nice. And you can get 15% off your first order at truewerk.com with code LEMONADE. That's TRUEWERK.com, code LEMONADE. Truewerk, built like it matters because it does.
And also because Atrioc read it from the wrong part. The work doesn't stop just because the weather changes. Upgrade to the
Well, we already
T2
said
work
that
pant
part.
and stay comfortable no matter what the day brings.
Okay, so we have a longer conversation we want to show you guys with the CEO, Kasser, where he answers a bunch more of these topics with a lot more depth. But now we're going to get into it, and I really hope you guys enjoy this.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Lemonade Stand. Today we have a very special guest, Kasser Younis, the CEO and founder of Applied Intuition.
They did your homework. You pronounced it right.
I actually had to ask right before this. I was like, wait, what's the last name?
This is, that's like my own mental way. Now, I said years ago, I did this like MIT interview. It was like a bunch of, MIT kids who were recruiting from MIT, and they had prepared and they did this. So I said that at the beginning. For a long time, that was the only like content that I had. So every time I would meet, people were particularly like, they'd watch that first 3 minutes of that episode and they'd be very precise with the name. And I was like, you clearly saw this MIT talk I did.
Thanks so much for sitting with us. We are here in one of the Applied Intuition garages with some of the vehicles behind us. And wanted to, actually, why don't you kick it off? We wanted to kind of see like, for the average person who might not be super aware of autonomous vehicles or might not care about them, why is something like this important on a broad level?
Yeah, could you paint a picture? If I am say I'm even a tech cynic, how are autonomous vehicles going to affect my life in positive ways?
Yeah. So my own view, I'm like an optimist cynic. So that's, I also have, thoughts around some of these, let's say, anxieties that people have around technology. But I think I try to approach it in a slightly different way. It's not that hard to do in self-driving because the value of self-driving is just less injuries and less deaths. And I think there's nobody who's like, that's hard to debate that that's a positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
Let me break down the self-driving ecosystem a little bit, and then then you guys can ask whatever you want. So a bunch of folks, when you say self-driving, depending on I grew up in Detroit, depending on if you're in Detroit in the car business, you're immediately thinking, okay, this is like highway lane keep, cruise control, adaptive cruise control. You put some radars and you have a camera, and the car kind of stays in the road. It's not sophisticated, intelligent self-driving, but it's like advanced cruise control. If you talk to somebody in San Francisco or LA and they see Waymos all the time, they think self-driving, it's a big robotaxi. There's no human in the vehicle at all. It's driving completely autonomously, and it goes basically anywhere in the city. If you're out in Perth in Australia and you say self-driving, that's where you have tons of mining happening in Western Australia, and that's kind of the home of some of the big mining operators as they jump off from Perth to mines. Autonomous hauling in mining has been happening for conservatively a decade, but really like 15, 20 years. The first time you're seeing trucks that are moving dirt autonomously. Now, that type of dirt moving in that universe, it's quite unsophisticated. It's just like essentially it's following a route. If you talk to somebody in a factory, they've seen mobile robots that follow the ground. I worked in factories 25 years ago. You'd have robots that are following the ground, and they were like essentially like slightly better than they're like forklifts. You can almost think of it, but they're not as heavy duty. So there's a huge like, universe of what self-driving is. So with that context, let me like put a structure to it. So first we'll talk cars and then every other industry. Cool. In cars, the way to think about self-driving, just to simplify it, is there a person sitting in the driver's seat or there's not a person sitting in the driver's seat? There's all of these like Society of Automotive Engineers levels, like L2, L2++, L3. We don't need to get into that. It's just really, is there a human sitting in the driver's seat or is not? We can simplify that by saying Tesla and Waymo. Right. And so like that's the most simple way and easy way to think about it. What Tesla really does is, and leaving the Cybercab out, this is the Teslas that you can buy.
As it currently exists on the road.
This is like, you buy it and it drives, generally speaking, for you, and it'll go hundreds, sometimes thousands of miles without you needing to intervene. And it'll go from point to point, and they'll navigate from your home all the way to your office. And maybe you won't, for 10 different drives, you won't interact at all, but sometimes you will. And it might be because there's an Uber drop off, or there's a box in the road, or somebody's pulled over. There's some construction site or something unique is happening. The traffic lights are not working because it rained and so there's the electricity's down or something. Then the human comes in and they basically take care of the last. I'll just be exaggerate, like 5%, but really it's like the last like 0.5% of cases. But you still need the human there. Without the human there, the Tesla's not going to, it does not have the capability to understand what's happening in the scene and navigate around it. And the key point here, and like where the like AI of all this is does the system perceive the environment correctly as it is, right, based on the sensors it has. A Tesla has less sensors than a Waymo, and right, therefore it's almost like somebody who just sees and perceives a little less. On the other side, you have Waymo, which has many more sensors, and there's no driver in the seat, which means it has to tackle every variant of thing that can happen, including like a police officer shuts down the road, right? And now suddenly everyone has to like back up and turn around. Like it's a completely, out of the blue scenario. So then that's that's kind of the scene within self-driving. The big question that is always asked is, well, when are we all going to have Tesla-like things, or when are we all getting Waymos?
Right.
In every
when will
city?
every car drive me to wherever I want?
And that's a more complex when we talk about that. But let me talk about all the other areas of self-driving that people don't talk about a lot. But
I think that people don't. Yeah, the average person is not engaging with or doesn't even really think about.
Yeah, and it's worth like for people listening, purely audio. We're sitting in front of a tractor, in front of like construction vehicles, as well as, there's a Porsche over there. There's a truck right next to me. There's this huge range of vehicles that you are working to make autonomous. And I think it's particularly interesting. So with that context.
So like I'm just using the Tesla Waymo example because everyone, most people are not farmers and most people are not working, as commercial truck drivers. But maybe the next kind of closest is commercial truck driving. So it's taking these, large trucks that typically move goods on highways and making them autonomous. There's a bunch of companies doing that already. There's a bunch of tests happening. We, for example, run driverless trucks, automated trucks, I should say, on Japanese highways right now. They're moving cargo right now as we speak.
Is that with no one
There's
inside monitoring? There is a safety driver.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think I don't think there is a driver out truck on the planet right now.
Yeah.
But that will happen very soon. Like that is not like, we're not talking about like 5 years from now or 3 years from now, or maybe even a year from now. I mean, there are absolutely companies that are trying to get driver out as we speak. Mm-hmm. But so in your mind, as you think, if you know nothing about self-driving, you can understand the self-driving truck thing. Now let's go to something more, let's say, unique. It's like a construction site. So now you're not really driving, and it's not really, so there, or maybe even like a more kind of a difficult thing to understand is a battlefield. So how does self-driving work in that situation? Let me use the battlefield example because it's kind of the most almost out there. You're a warfighter and you're in a war zone and you are injured, you're incapacitated, and you need that vehicle to leave the theater. And you should be able to tell that vehicle, I need to get out of here. And that vehicle can leave and exit autonomously. So broadly speaking, you can just think about self-driving and really it's just taking intelligence and putting it into a physical moving machine. A lot of times when people say physical AI, especially in Silicon Valley, they're always talking about humanoids. And I think the way we at Applied Intuition think about physical AI is actually just taking intelligence into all these existing machines. There are north of 1 billion of these moving machines on the planet right now. They're just not intelligent. The human is providing the intelligence.
And you mean across both
All these
cars,
verticals,
all of it?
cars, trucks,
Boats.
combines, boats. We do work in maritime. We do work on drones. Drones are probably a good example of where almost like because a human cannot sit in the physical thing, intelligence is really embodied in it in almost from the beginning. And as we like every quarter and every month and every year, that intelligence will get cheaper and it'll get more sophisticated. And so it can do more and more things. Right now, everything is quite simple. I think the most impressive stuff is Waymo's robotaxis, which are like, they can basically handle anything that's thrown at them within their geographic constraint.
Okay, so kicking off on that, here at Applied Intuition, you are not just doing what Waymo is currently doing and trying to tackle this specific type of self-driving car, or you're not just going after the construction industry. You guys are instead building an operating system, a set of technology that can be installed in any vehicle, and not just any driving car, but into a tractor, into a drone, into agricultural equipment. Yeah. So on a high level, could you just break down why do that? That seems, to a layman like us, insane. Why wouldn't you go for one of these verticals? Why wouldn't you pick one industry and instead you guys are deploying now across all these different industries. We've been able to see them in our factory tour. Why do that? What's the benefit? What's the strategy?
Yeah, so I'm an engineer originally, but I also did an MBA, so I'm going to use some of my MBA.
Yeah, no,
Master's in Business Administration
jargon. Yeah,
jargon, which
shifts.
is like you're talking about a Tesla or a Waymo as an example. These are vertical companies. They're doing everything. They're making the sensors, and Waymo doesn't make the cars, but Tesla makes the cars all the way down to the compute.
Right.
So they're verticalized. There's advantages of being verticalized, especially when the technology, the subcomponents don't exist. We are a horizontal company. We're like a chip company. An NVIDIA or a Qualcomm or AMD, these companies are providing technology which goes into lots and lots of devices. On the software side, we're like an Android. An Android runs across thousands of hardware devices. And so we're, for the engineers who are listening at home, we're both literally, we make an operating system, and also proverbially, we, like colloquially, this technology sits on lots and lots of devices. Why is that? I think I'll give you let's say the reason when we started the company, why we went down this route, and then kind of the reality of what it is today. When we started the company, we didn't quite know which version of self-driving was going to be the most consumed by the market. So when you pick, let's say, robotaxi, you're making a decision.
You're locked
into that, and it's a very expensive decision. I mean, Waymo has spent north of $25 billion developing that technology. To be super clear, there's not many things on the planet that companies or governments have spent $25 billion on for research and development. Like, I mean, like the tallest, the tallest building in the world, the Burj Khalifa in I think it's Dubai, that costs 1.5 billion. So like when we just throw these numbers around like 25 billion, like that is a huge amount of capital.
Yeah.
And so, we didn't have Uncle Google. We were starting our, we're the scrappy band. We're not funded by, we're not Interscope Records in Venice. And so we gotta start making hits, and we gotta distribute them. And the way that we started that business was Applied Intuition was like, hey, let's just build a tooling that all these different self-driving companies can use to build their systems. And what that really taught us is actually horizontal actually works well, because we're not then betting on a specific form factor. We're just betting the entire industry will somehow get autonomous. Maybe trucks will come faster. Maybe construction will come faster. Maybe robotaxis will come faster. And we didn't know. And I think that almost like in some finance terms, we kind of like isolated ourselves from that risk.
Okay.
But then as we got deeper in the business, our company's almost 10 years old now. As we got deeper into business and we built like operating systems, and we started building autonomy directly because our customers asked for it, then it's like, oh, actually, we can do the same thing across lots of verticals and lots of First, it was just automotive, just lots of manufacturers. Then I was like, oh, actually, you can do the same thing in trucking and in defense, et cetera.
Yeah.
Then something really important happened. There was a technology shift. So I don't want to get too much in the weeds, but There was this research paper, "Attention is all that you need," that Google published. The OpenAI guys saw it. That led to this LLM boom, which is like post transformers, is a type of architecture within AI which allows for these modern chatbots, roughly. Well, that same technology also entered self-driving. That same AI architecture is now in self-driving. And the way that you'll hear about it when you're listening to NVIDIA or somebody, they'll say end-to-end self-driving technology. That's what they're talking about. So self-driving before this very important moment of transformers, each of the verticals were actually quite discrete and different. So when Waymo,
Transformers became a broad system that applied across
think about chatbots. You remember you had chatbots that were like just for finance and just for customer service.
Right.
And now you have this like generalized language model which does everything.
Yeah.
And that's because of the underlying technical architecture. And so today, you can feed in data from mines and from cars, human-driven cars. And that actually makes this model, which runs on lots of different hardware, better.
Yeah.
Including models that are running on boats and models that are running on. We literally have flown F-16s autonomously, like on planes. And so there's almost like the survival instinct of a young company that was like, hey, let's sell to a bunch of players because we don't know what's gonna work. We're just kind of betting on the industry. And then the actual technological advantage, which we've certainly got lucky and benefit from.
I think there was from our tour earlier.
Sorry for getting long answers. I feel like I'm giving 10-minute
No, I
answers.
can tell you're very excited and passionate. Yeah. No, it's great.
When we did the tour earlier, we had the opportunity to speak with the deputy CTO. I think something that was unexpected to me was this idea that all of these different verticals can be complementary to each other in the data that they bring in, and that the information that you're pulling from, a mine is not necessarily unhelpful to the semi-truck or the regular car. That it is helpful.
Yeah, it's the opposite. Diverse data improves models faster. So it's like you actually want a diversity of data, and as like. Let me use a more salient example. You could have just collect highway data.
Yeah.
And and imagine you're a human, not an AI. You're a human. You only drive on highways. Well, then you get thrown into like city traffic in Karachi. You would be overwhelmed by that. By the way, there are studies where it shows like if you've only been driving in America for a long time and then you go to another country, it does take you like a day, 2 days, 3 days to adjust to the rules of the road.
Yeah, I almost killed a guy in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Also
cut that
in New Zealand.
Cut that out. Edit that out.
1 to 3 days is generous. I think you're irresponsible for me.
You're asking why we're doing this. Exhibit A.
to save Kiwis from Doug.
Specifically.
That poor man is just living, his life. He doesn't realize that Doug almost took him out.
Surely I'm safe on this side of the road where people don't normally drive.
Yeah.
So I want to just quickly try to understand the infrastructure side of this, because I did not know that LLMs and transformers were so pivotal to this industry. I wouldn't have thought that, to be honest, even as somebody who's,
It's not LLMs are the output. Well, I'm talking about
the transformer architecture. Excuse me.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I guess, am I correct in understanding that you guys are sort of building this system that can ultimately run on many different vehicles and understand many different environments, and that as you pull data from all of the different environments that you're testing on, all of them are feeding and growing and maturing a single world model? Is that what's fundamentally going on?
Yeah, world model has a different technical definition, so I won't use that.
Okay.
A physical AI model, which is understanding the world around it, making decisions, and then telling the machine to act, to literally do this thing, accelerate or move in a different direction. But yes, the answer is yes. Yeah.
Do you have kind of a larger
which is
vision?
pretty amazing when you think about it.
Unintuitive. I mean, I've watched the 3 Blue 1 Brown, if you know him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And learn the transform. And in my brain, I don't understand the leap from that to running a construction rig, but it's amazing that it works.
I mean, think about it this way. I mean, just think about it. You as a human, you drive a car.
Yeah.
And so once you drive a car, if you sat in a truck, you don't know, maybe you don't know how to drive a manual or specifically like a large Class A vehicle or something like that. But you have an understanding of this is the steering wheel, that's the gas, that's the brake, and I'm going to go on the road and in these lane lines. And so it is similar. There's a lot of like transferred learning there.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Well, what's really happening is the model is getting us an understanding of the physics of the world. That's really what's happening. And that's why this is, physical AI. It is,
Right.
it isn't so whereas in large language models, there's understanding these concepts and how they relate to each other, which are words, individual words. And how does,
Right.
when I say something like fall, based on the context, am I talking about a weather? Am I talking about somebody tripping? Or am I talking about long-term capital management falling as a hedge fund, right? Those are three different, but the context tells you. In the physical world, the environment tells you what's a drivable surface and what can I do and what do I expect the other things in the physical environment for me to do. It's actually a pretty tough problem. Like we assume all these things. We know because everything we grew up with that this table is not going to move because we have an understanding of the properties of this table and gravity. A model has to learn all of those things, and that's that. And so you want to expose it to diverse data, but there's like the classic AI. So the scaling laws really work, and there's a lot of effort that goes into actually making these really intelligent systems. But we think it's obviously a really big deal. Like I think one of the mistakes that people make is like self-driving will only be in new things. You have to buy a brand new thing that has self-driving. But actually, like you go to a mine, those machines are there for 25 years. They're being bought to run for decades in that mine. So we can't wait till the turnover. So then we can retrofit those machines with hardware to make them intelligent.
Is there something, I think what I'm imagining is like the platform that you guys are developing has been deployed to like so many different types of things. Is there an expectation of something like the boats you guys have worked on that is very far away from like the end vision? Whereas something like self-driving for commercial vehicle, like for my car, is maybe very difficult, but also practically seems very far along.
Yeah.
And seems close to the end vision of what that's supposed to be. So is there something where you guys feel like you're short or missing?
Yeah,
the
I would
mark?
disagree with that. That view where like even if everybody had let's say Tesla FSD in every one of their cars, just an example, like 98% of vehicles are not Teslas.
Yeah.
So they don't have that. But let's say the other 98% got it. When you ask about what's difficult, getting those other 98% and getting the companies and just not to pick on anything, but designing a car is hard enough, let alone, making it an attractive car that, people want to buy but now putting real intelligence inside it in a way that's easy to use. That's going to take many, 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 many years. Like that's the difficult part of all this stuff is not the technology. It's the diffusion of this technology into these machines. That's actually the hard part.
Well, you guys had a recent breakthrough on this front, right? Like you've announced this partnership with Stellantis.
Yeah.
And your guys' platform is being directly integrated into a bunch of these car brands that I think people are familiar with. Things like Maserati,
Jeep and stuff. Yeah.
What is that? How is that playing out over like the next few years?
Yes, Stellantis, we just announced it just because this is topical, but of the top 20 global automakers, 18 are customers. We're in vast majority of the brands you ever think of, and you look at a parking lot, we're working with them.
Wait, so can you also dive into that? What does that mean? If you're partnered with these brands, does that mean they're just using your software? Are they adding sensors to be able to use? Like, what is the as we sit here, what is the state of like what your tech and software is doing, and how OEMs, the car manufacturers, are changing what they're doing?
There's a let's talk about how to build a self-driving system.
If we could just give people some brief context, the tour that we did before this, we got in some cars with your guys' operating system installed. We're able to interact with these vehicles in ways that same model, if you bought it right now at like a dealership down the street, you wouldn't be able to do.
Yeah.
So like how close is it to this partnership making that dealership car launch with that software that I'm looking at in the garage?
Like so that's a whole business. It's you're taking like there's two different topics here. So one is just the in-cabin experience, the intelligent in-cabin experience, and the other self-driving.
Okay.
So they mix, and over time they'll converge, but those are two separate almost product groups, as you can talk about it. And we do both of those things. which is and we broadly call this bringing intelligence into the physical machine.
Okay.
So how you talk to the car and how the car interacts with you, and then how the car drives are two different things. To answer your question of, what do? We provide that full spectrum. We're a technology provider. They think of us as just like a chip company, except we don't sell chips. So your Stellantis or your whatever car company you can think of, and you want to make your in-cabin experience better. You want it to be the best in the business, but you don't have AI engineers on your team. You don't have those skills in your team. Or you do have those skills, but it's really, really expensive. When we're a technology provider, we can split those costs across lots and lots of manufacturers. A way to think about this in the old car business is I used to work at Bosch. When Bosch, Mercedes can do brakes. But why does Mercedes buy brakes from Bosch? Because Bosch takes all the globe's capacity, demand for brakes, and they put it in one factory, and they make all the brakes there, and it actually lowers the cost. So Bosch will make brakes cheaper than even Mercedes could make it themselves, just because they're doing volume. We're kind of doing the same thing on these platforms, both the in-cabin platforms and on the self-driving stuff. So then you're Komatsu and you'd make construction equipment. You're like, actually, the in-cabin stuff we also want, and the self-driving stuff we also want.
Right.
And then we can sell them that.
So is it correct that maybe first step would be for some of these companies, they set up the software so that there's this in-cabin experience, and then you're also offering this essentially product for the software system, which is autonomous driving.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, the reason it's hard to talk about generalizations is that every company has a different strategy.
Okay.
Some people are like, hey, actually, we want to buy your self-driving, but we want to do the in-cabin stuff ourselves.
Okay.
Some people are like, we'll do that. We'll buy your in-cabin stuff, but we'll buy we'll make our own self-driving. Now, the reason I talk about like we're a spectrum of solutions, we also, and where we started the company is we also make all the engineering tools to make these things. So some companies will just say, sell us all the engineering tools. We're going to make the IP ourselves. So we're and that way it's like we're truly a technology provider.
Gotcha. Man.
Now for the people who are like at home, like this is what like the bolts of a technology company are.
I think many people who are broadly cynical about the technology have these fears of
AI
of AI broadly, but even just autonomous vehicles, like the consequences of job loss in the short term, how that's going to affect things. I'm curious what you feel about that, and if there's a sense of responsibility in the way that you work on things here that comes with that understanding.
Yeah, there are a couple of areas. Absolutely, you have responsibility. We're like members of society, and like we're not just like we're not just like abstracted away from like this is the area, like, place we live. I grew up in Detroit. Like I care a lot about what happens there. There's two things. One, there's a responsibility just from a safety side. You don't want to field technology that is unsafe. So it's our first core value in the company is safety. So, and then there's responsibility. What you're talking about, the downstream, almost you could say like economic impacts or like the social impacts. AI in the knowledge worker space is actually, I think, a way more difficult answer. Like what happens to accountants and what happens to, in the white collar fields.
Sure.
In the blue collar fields, long haul trucking, in farming. I mean, the average American farmer is 58 years old. Like there's not a huge, and our need for food is doubling over the next, I think it's 20 years. So like we need more food and the farmers are very old. You take mining example, 1% of the globe's jobs, workforce are in mining, but 8% of fatalities are in mining. Mining is an extremely dangerous job. And also, by the way, it's in the middle of nowhere. I mean, the punchline being is like people are rushing into these jobs. And so how do you fix the farming problem, or how do you fix the mining problem, or the long haul trucking problem is another example. People don't want to be long haul truckers. Japan, the reason the government and the individual companies are so intent on getting driverless trucks out there and why we're doing it is they literally there's no drivers. The driver shortages are shutting down.
They had to put caps on overtime hours because people are like working themselves to death because there are not enough truck drivers.
There's not enough truck drivers. So this area of AI, which is, putting intelligence on physical moving machines, there's a lot less of that heartburn and anxiety. It's like AI can't get here fast enough. Autonomy can't get here fast enough. So that's the broad point. I think it's a lot less contentious in this area. But when you get to specific things like taxi drivers in San Francisco and in New York, where they do want to do that job, and now robotaxi, I think those are big questions that have to be figured out. I think, again, this is where we started the conversation of I'm cynical and I'm an optimist. This is where like I'm certainly not a market fundamentalist like some folks in the Valley tend to be, or Harvard MBAs or whatever group you want to associate me negatively with. Is I do think I'll use an example of something I've seen in real time. When I was at Y Combinator, so before I did this company, I was at Y Combinator, where of many things, OpenAI was started. Sam Altman was the president. I was the COO. But relevantly, we funded DoorDash. And I remember when DoorDash was coming through, it was called Palo Alto Food Delivery. And I'm still in touch with those guys, Tony and crew, and they're really, really smart guys. Just there's a couple of 4 founders at the time. And I remember thinking like, well, Grubhub already exists and Seamless already exists. Then we have the DoorDash story, which is like, we all use DoorDash now. From a labor perspective, what's happened? Actually, people have left the McDonald's and the Taco Bells, and they're much more driving for DoorDash and Uber. And so when you look at some of these restaurant, franchisees, they say, we have a hard time getting people to work here. The reason isn't, partly it's wages, they're not paying enough, but partly it's because the job is actually worse. When you're driving for yourself, you can start and end whenever you want. You have an annoying boss. I literally worked at McDonald's. You don't have anyone tell. Like, I remember one of the first days I worked at McDonald's, I had my hands in my pockets, and my boss, I won't say her name now, because she's a real human out there.
Yeah, she watches the show.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, she was like, hey, get your hands out of your pockets. And anyone with hands in their pockets, they're not doing real work. And I was just like, there's no customers here. But it's like, that's the kind of stuff you deal with. So you drive for Uber. Guess what? No one's telling you to. And that means the labor pool is choosing to move from McDonald's or wherever, Wendy's or wherever, to Uber and DoorDash. The point I'm making is, I think when we funded DoorDash, you could have made this point, which is like, well, this is going to impact all these restaurants because people are going to start driving, the restaurants and franchisees, because people are going to start driving. But it's like the economy kind of finds itself. The most fundamental question broadly is, will our problems be done? That's what, to some degree, capitalism is, and this is some degree what the money exchange is. And for vast majority of my career, I didn't have an assistant. And I finally begrudgingly got an assistant. I am not doing less work. I'm doing the same amount of work. I'm just doing a different type of work. And so my optimist view is, I say this as a South Asian man who has family members who drive for Uber and, were taxi drivers before, there will be other jobs that will naturally emerge because humans always need problems solved. I don't know what those answers are. My brain cannot compute all the different variables of where those job pools will go. That's my hope. In the other stuff, farming and agriculture, it's more pretty straightforward. I think
it seems like there's 2 categories of maybe on one hand, there will be this end result that's figured out, but on the other, in something like farming, there actually isn't this large displacement that you'd expect because there aren't that many people filling those jobs in the first place.
But even that concept of displacement, I'm not an economist, so and I think I'm always I kind of always roll my eyes when I see Silicon Valley guys who are pontificating in areas way outside their area of expertise. So I want to be super thoughtful. The stuff that I know Detroit, and I know the car business. I know, Y Combinator and funding companies and starting companies, and I know physical AI. So I'm putting that caveat on there. The displacement issue is, if you look at jobs on a quarterly basis, and you'll see the U.S. created 50,000 jobs or lost 50,000 jobs, that's actually only the net difference. Every quarter, millions of jobs get created and destroyed. It's just millions are also, so it's just the difference. And I think if I remember correctly, it's literally single digit millions every quarter get destroyed and created. So within that context, lots of companies are coming and going, lots of jobs are coming and going, and any individual job code is actually pretty small relative to the full pool of the labor market. Mm-hmm. But again, I'm a little hesitant. You hear hesitation in my voice because I'm not trying to propagate it'll all be perfect and okay. I do think these are new times. And if you look at the Industrial Revolution, which is a often talked about, example, there's a lot of upheaval in the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the Soviet Union is created in the Industrial Revolution, which ultimately ends up being honestly a huge calamity for 8 decades, where you have, then that's only one revolution. There are many other revolutions that happen as the outputs of industrialization. You have the antitrust kind of revolution that happens in America in the post-industrial revolution. You have 2 world wars that happen post-industrial revolution. Do they all happen because of the steam engine and then ultimately the dynamo? Yes and no. Yes and no. Like kind of, but or job displacement maybe. Like kind of not. It's also because people move from agriculture first societies to maybe cities. There's a lot of things changing. I don't know what all of these moving variables happen, but I think if you look at our politics, you do see something is going on. The political environment that we're in today is distinctly different. Politics has always been divisive. I think this is also like you think like the 60s were less divisive. You think, the Civil War where the country literally fought each other was less divisive. No, we've had very divisive periods. It doesn't mean it's the end of America. It doesn't mean it's the end of capitalism and democracy or something like that. But the point is, I think we should all be aware, like these things are moving and we need to maybe come up with new solutions because the problems are going to be new.
Are you, like, when you are working on technology like this, whether it's required or voluntary, you working with government regulators? I mean, how much of this involves, like, so for in Japan, where there's this...
It's required to be. The short answer is it's required. Yeah.
And so how much, like, I guess, what types of conversations they're having? Because presumably people are aware of this, governments are aware of this, and maybe in the areas like mining or trucking in certain countries where there's just a straight up labor shortage and it is causing problems, that's probably a lot easier. But what are those conversations
regulations
like?
Manifest themselves in different industries in very different ways. In mining, for example, as I mentioned earlier, regulations are really around safety. It is an extremely dangerous job.
Yeah.
People die all the time. And so all the rules the government has, around the world are all based on literally 100 years of people dying. As an aside, a couple of years ago, I went to Bolivia, just to backpack. And I went to a mine in Bolivia, which was completely unregulated. It was essentially Bolivia, there's roughly a socialist kind of view, which was these international mining companies are exploiting workers, and the workers are just going to run the mines themselves. Hint: the most dangerous workplace I've ever seen, because there's nobody holding any rules to accord. So as much as governments are, we especially Americans, I think, just hate government in general, no matter what you are. I mean, or companies are hated. There's also like a common thing in America. They also do bring in rules. And they bring in, when a mistake gets made, rules are made. So when you think about regulations, they always kind of look backwards. So the regulations that we see on cars and robotaxis and trucks are all around who can drive and how can they drive and how are they. There's new rules and regulations being made literally for robotaxis and some of these things, but regs always are far, far behind. The car is invented in 1886. In Germany, the stop sign, which is just the octagon, red, white letters in bold, 1930. That's when it finally becomes consistent across the U.S.
That was after the Roaring 20s? We had the whole Roaring 20s? No stop signs?
No, it was just they were all done in different ways.
Okay.
So there was finally and then the highway, the NHTSA, the Highway Transportation Authority for America, starts in the late 60s. The car is invented in the late 1800s and it's in 1960. So regs just tend to be really far behind. So I think the way, society is, we shouldn't expect the government to basically anticipate all the problems. I think it'll always be leaning. But then you're saying, like, are you just expecting the companies themselves to self-regulate?
Right.
And that can also be really bad because the company motive is always simple: to make profits. That's the reason a company exists. The way I would think about all these things, regulations, governments, companies, labor unions, et cetera, they're just groups of people that are working on projects together. And so I think when you kind of dissolve this, NHTSA or the FAA or General Motors or whatever, and you dissolve it, it's just groups of people working together, then you kind of get a more human understanding of like what it is. It's like, everyone's just kind of stumbling their way through and trying to figure things out. I'd give a lot of credit to companies like Waymo who've done, really good in having a really high safety bar and kind of almost setting an industry standard. I think that's been super positive.
Support for the show comes from Fora.
Aiden, you're dumb. You're dumb as hell. I've been wanting to say it.
I'm not dumb. You know what I've been doing? I've been going out to the street corner and I've been advertising my expert ability to plan travel for people. And I've already started raking in the dough.
Oh,
Boots on the ground.
Cash.
Boots on the ground, marketing, clients. There's no better way to do it, I would argue.
No, there is a better way. That's why you're dumb. You could use Fora. They can help you learn how to become a travel agent.
What are you talking about?
Not only can you give other people instructions on how to plan their trip and help them, you could even use the website to go on trips yourself, Aiden, instead of standing on a corner.
I have a giant client list.
Who is your client list? And why would they pay you what travel was that?
I think this person driving in the middle of the street, I kind of came up to their window and they handed me this.
Wait, were you selling lemonade? Become a Fora advisor today at Fora.com/lemonade. That's FORA travel.com/lemonade. Make sure you tell them we sent you. Foratravel.com/lemonade.
Or just get out there.
No,
just get out there and try it.
Support for this show comes from Shopify.
You bailed on the year of health after trying that. Let's be real. Let's be real. But there's one thing.
No.
It's funny. He's been holding strong on this. He has not been eating all the candy he used to, which I actually think is unfortunate because there's actually this crazy trend right now where a lot of content creators have been coming out and they'll like release their own snack or candy or something like that. And when you make a product like that, you probably wonder where you could sell it online, how you could sell it to a bunch of people online. Shopify allows you to build out a store with their design tools, sell, track your inventory, fulfill your products.
True, there's no way they have built-in marketing tools.
Yeah, so if you want to get that new candy out
That's
there,
crazy.
Shopify can help you push it.
But don't do it because I don't want to eat more candy. So use Shopify for good. Make a health food targeted towards streamers who are not good at sticking
We're
to
going to get you to
diets.
cave. Turn those what ifs into cha-ching with Shopify today. Sign up for your $1 per month trial today at shopify.com/lemonade. Go to shopify.com/lemonade. That's shopify.com/lemonade.
Cha-ching!
I'm kind of deciding where I want to go from here.
There's a lot of topics.
Yeah, I think it was in a different interview with you. I saw you talking about the way your presence abroad has grown. The amount of like even the truck that's operating in Japan right now. You have a presence in a ton of other countries around the world. One of the places you don't have a presence in, as far as I understand, is China.
Yeah.
And I think the world has
I think it's the only major market we don't play in.
And China and the US have kind of become these major players within this AI industry. And I was wondering how you see, like, is Applied Intuition competing with some other major players in this physical AI space in China? What's the reason for not having anything there in such a large market? It's kind of your guys' like relationship with that country and why there's no presence.
Yeah. It's complicated.
I'm sure.
Like everything, I tend to want to get into a lot of nuance. But I will because these are like they need nuance. Let me answer some of those questions in separate chunks. So first is like, should we think of China as a competition or are they our competitors? Well, like no country, we don't, a definition of a competitor is somebody who is taking money out of the same bucket out of you. Yep. And a country doesn't take money. There are companies in China that will compete with us, but not the country. And so I think what you're broadly speaking is like, hey, does America compete with China? I think everybody competes with everybody. China competes with Korea, Korea competes with Japan, Japan competes with America, America competes with Germany, but we also all work together. And I think that's like the League of Nations, kind of view of like, what are the rules and orders that we're going to figure out? China specifically is a communist country. And so they're capitalist in nature, but that means their goal of the government is very different. Their goal of their companies is very different. So we tend to project our values onto other people. So let's take a specific example. Like we hear Huawei. And Huawei has, like for the folks at home, originally it was a networking company, but now it's like a broad technology company, basically a consumer electronics company today. And you think, oh, well, consumer electronics, it must be like Samsung and it must be like Apple. Actually, Huawei isn't like that. Huawei is, the word Huawei is China's ambition. That's what it translates at. And I think something like 1 out of 4 employees of Huawei are members of the government. And the founder has said, our goal is not to make profits. Our goal is to, grow market share and influence around the globe. Can you imagine Apple, a quarter of the, Apple's name is Make America Great Again. And 1 out of 4 members are party members of a specific party. And they say, we don't care about profits. We care about America's influence. That's not a company. That is just, it's not. So what I'm trying to say is you should not compare Apple to Huawei, because Huawei is not Apple and Apple's not Huawei. These are very, very different things. They both make products, but they're very different things. And the mistake that we make in our debates and our dialogues, and we say things like, does Applied Intuition compete with a company X, or does Apple compete with company Y? They're not apples and apples. These are very, very different things. And so,
but there's probably, I imagine there are Chinese companies that are approaching this problem of automation across all these verticals in a similar capacity. Like whether or not they're in pursuit of profit or not, they're still trying to have a presence in all the cars that you might be.
Absolutely. Now, the reason that we don't play, and just to answer that question very, very directly, is broadly there are competitors, and there's no one-to-one competitor. There isn't like a precise company, but there's many, and that, by the way, exists in the U.S. and that exists in Europe as well. But in terms of specifically like, why don't we have an office there and like compete? We have offices basically everywhere else. We started in automotive. The Chinese automotive industry is extremely insular, and the government puts their thumb on the scale for Chinese companies. You can't just go in on an even. You can't compete on an even playing field, and all the way to like IP is not respected. Like literally, people will steal your ideas, and you have no recourse. There's no legal system that the government will intervene on the behalf of Applied Intuition against a Chinese company and say, well, Applied Intuition, this was your IP, and this company stole it, and we're going to hold this company punishment. They're like, no, they're a Chinese company. They win. They always win. And so it's like, we just don't want to participate in an environment where that's not going to work for us. And then broadly speaking, also like, I think this gets overblown. We do defense work for the U.S. and people think, oh, that's the reason you're not in China. That's probably the least reason. I mean, frankly speaking, because we're a dual-use company. So all the technology we're building, it's not like we're building defense-specific tech. We're building tech that is actually commercially available in lots of areas, and then we're putting it in defense machines, which is different than being like a defense contractor.
I guess I'm curious now, something that I realize we haven't touched on. You talked about IP or strategy being leaked potentially. What is your guys' unique advantage over other companies? There are many people trying this, and I think you are one of the most successful right now, and it's really actively being deployed in many industries right now. And my understanding is in Japan, but even like there are cars here in this area.
There's everywhere. I mean,
we're running your autonomous software or the software system broadly.
I called a car into the garage with a button.
So,
So
what's
the edge?
Why are you guys successful? Why are you one of the leaders right now?
I'll give, I think, what the actual answer is, and then I'll talk about it from a non-technical audience perspective. The actual answer is these systems are incredibly complex to make. Like, why is Anthropic and OpenAI the only two that are like that, or a handful? Because they're really hard to do what they're doing. Like, this is not just like a business strategy. It's not just like, it's just not like a distribution. The technology is actually difficult to make. I've said before, there's less countries that have robotaxis than have nuclear weapons. I mean, these are extremely complex technologies. Yeah, I mean, and so we just hand wave over it like what a Waymo does or what a Tesla does. It's incredible. I mean, it really is, and we should be like very proud as people of Silicon Valley that these companies are local hometown heroes. So we do things that are really hard. The non-technical answer is the way I think we know our markets really well. I mean, I went to the General Motors Institute undergrad. I grew up in the car business. Yeah, I worked at General Motors. I mean, I love the car business, and I understand the car business. I think, when Peter, my co-founder, Peter Ludwig, is also, his father and grandfather worked in the car business for 20 and 30 years. I mean, we are like car guys all the way down. Like we used to make jokes that like we forgot more about the car business than lots of people know. And I'm not just talking about the car business from a enthusiast, like I know, the difference between a 991 GT3 and a 992 GT3 Touring. Like I can tell you, the spec differences. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the actual industry. How do you make a car? How do you price it? How do you...
You worked on like the V6 line, right?
Yeah, I did. I not as labor. I worked as a manufacturing engineer.
Okay,
but I also did other. On the labor side, it was Buicks. But
this
is we're getting real.
A part of helping run factories that make things. It's like you don't just have a car in your garage.
Yeah. I love the car business, but the point is, one of the reasons I think we're very successful is so when you know an industry that deeply, it's like when you talk to people who've been in defense for 25, 30 years, they understand. Especially if they're like a warfighter and they were deployed, they understand defense in a way that you as a layman will never understand. So then if you can marry product or technology with their understanding of the market, you can do some really special things because so I think like the non-technical point, it's like we really know our business. We know the markets we play in and we know how our buyers are going to buy. And so good products and understanding the market. The VC answer, because each of these answers, it depends on who you're
changes.
Changes. From a VC perspective, I think they would say we're working in a market that deeply wants our products, and it's good you guys are smart, and it's good that you work hard and you know the market. But it's the market demands these products, and it's just sucking sound, and that's why we've done well. It's a mix of all of those things. It's kind of like why are certain podcasts successful? Why are they not? There's 50 reasons. It could be they started before everybody. It could be the hosts are, whatever, we're famous or...
Tall and handsome. Yes.
Yeah, tall and handsome. That's why we're all sitting. But there's like,
their guests are tall and handsome as well.
Exactly. Yeah. What's that saying? It's like failure is an orphan, but success has 1,000 mothers or something like that. It's like some variance of that. There's many reasons that you'll be successful. But if we were failing, you'd be like, it would be like crickets.
Yeah. We've touched a little bit on your personal history. You grew up in Pakistan, you immigrated here, grew up in Detroit. And I'm kind of curious, as you mentioned, you worked at YC and kind of around the same time that folks like Sam Altman went off to go create software AI focused companies. You essentially the exact same time went off and said, we want to make hardware and vehicles do amazing things. Why'd you choose to do that? It seems a lot harder.
Yeah.
Seems maybe a little more painful, a little less immediately rewarding, even though these are both obviously very hard. So well, how does your life experience lead up to that? And
I think we're to be clear, I think we're more like an AI company than literally if you look at like how much we spend on compute and what the technical abilities of the you're
building an
engineers.
OS. It's not like you're building cars.
It's software. Yeah, exactly. I think the real insight was, hey, partner with the manufacturers, which is very different than the reason is. I think it's just what I know. I know I worked at General Motors. I worked at Bosch. I went to the General Motors Institute. It's merging, and it's super lucky, honestly. The two areas of my life, which is like Google and the software universe and the AI world, with the industry that I grew up in. So it's more random than planned. I remember when Peter and I were starting the company, we were looking at ideas in like crypto and voice and all these other, I'm so happy we didn't go to that. It's like, I think people think this is typically I only do these talks for founders. That's usually my audience. I really love founders. And and founders are just basically a small business owner, except they do it within this concept that they can raise capital and scale because software scales really well. That's fundamentally the difference between a laundromat and somebody who runs a software company. They're still small business owners, but founders, I think you have to be very careful that you don't take away the wrong lessons. And you somehow, and the wrong lesson to take away from applied intuition is like, oh, we already like had this plan and we knew it was all like, it was like this, I think that's just disingenuous. I think what you're trying to do when you're a young company is you want to get some traction, and traction, to be very clear, to be very explicit, is
you're
somebody
talking about
likes
the tractors getting traction on the
it's
wheels.
like somebody wants the thing that you want. You're doing a podcast. Somebody's actually listening. A small group of people are actually listening, and then they tell other people, and then that's what it is. And in our business is like, well, we know the car business, and we can make stuff for those guys from the stuff that we know, which is software and AI. And then once we got a little bit of revenue through literally revenue and momentum because of that. That allows us to hire more people. To be very clear, like what do we do with the money that we make? We use it to pay salaries. It doesn't go into some bank account or dividends. It literally allows us to hire more people to pay for the lights and to pay for the food and to pay for the GPUs and then it allows us to continue to work on the stuff that we like, which is this intersection of hardware and software.
I think we'll call it there. Kasser, thank you so much for joining us. This is fascinating. It's a fascinating industry. I feel like we could have talked for like 3 more hours.
Yeah, 100%.
I have like 100 questions here I wanted to.
And then we still were pretty high level. There's a lot of nuance in all of these things. The last thing I would say is like whether you're talking, let's say you're somebody who doesn't work in AI or doesn't know about AI, but are just constantly hearing about this thing and like how do you relate to relate to this, and you're trying to like maybe listen to this to learn. Just engage with the products yourself as much as you can, and you start seeing the limitations. And there are a bunch of like YouTube videos on like trying to get like ChatGPT just to count to 1,000, and it's hopeless. So the reason I say is if you get close to the technology and you learn, I do think it lowers your anxiety a little bit. I mean, the root of fear is lack of understanding. So try to understand. That doesn't mean there are not real risks. Doesn't mean we as a society have to figure out all these complex things we talked about. But I think you're a bit more in the driver's seat, no pun intended.
Kasser, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Yeah,
thanks
for having me.
watching.
Oh my God. We flew back from San Jose so
That was so
quick.
fast.
Man, San Jose it's a bad place.
It's a bad city, bro. I fled like I'm fleeing a war-torn country.
Loved the interview. Loved the company tour. San Jose needs to go.
Oh, okay. It was funny driving, dude. We walked into the airplane. We got off the airplane, and it's just like every AI company on every billboard ever. I was like, I forgot what it's like to be in Silicon Valley. This is so funny.
Yeah, it's so crazy. You see every big name company you could ever think of in like the 10-minute drive.
Yeah, it's like
from the airport
NVIDIA,
to-
and then there's Intel, and then there's Microsoft. It's like just right across the street.
Oh yeah, the San Jose Airport always has a gigantic wall-to-wall business-to-business AI solutions ad or something. It's always like
we're
it's like
waiting in the-
Fleabur, and it's like if you're a corporate CMO who needs to upgrade your data analytics,
Try Duplet.
it's just
Speaking of-
it changes every time. It's a new company that's clearly gone out of business.
Speaking
but-
of Gumbler, when we were in the airport, like waiting to fly back, there's like a humanoid robot that you can tell you about
coffee?
your gate. No, it was just there to
really?
like give you assistance, and it was like it's very funny. But anyway, this was cool. I mean, obviously this is a more experimental kind of episode and format, but we had the opportunity, and we're just super interested in this whole kind of ecosystem. So hope you've enjoyed this. Any takeaways you had from Kasser interview, other things before we move on to fun
did you guys see
goofs?
anything off the record? Anything? Did you sneak behind any corridors? Did you open any?
The employees
What did
were
you find?
too fucking happy. It was funny because a bunch of the other employees said something really similar, and they there seems to be the shared camaraderie there of I have fun at work because I get to tackle really difficult problems, and I feel like I'm a part of something really unique. Like I'm part of this like second industrial revolution right now, and that they all seem kind of motivated by that. And I was so genuinely surprised because I'm just like staring at Vikram to see if he's like,
Yeah,
are
is
they
there a gun in his back?
like
or is-
wink if they're holding you here type of thing. But they just love
they
it.
seem
And,
vibed. That's cool.
yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I hadn't really thought about until this is, however many billions of cars there are on the road or hundreds of millions. I forget the exact
There's
number.
only 12 total, but yeah.
There's 12. Of the 12 cars on the road. I mean, even if you have, a couple companies like Breakout and like they make an autonomous vehicle, if you want to get towards this world where people aren't killing each other with cars all the time, you need to come up with some systems, whether it's Applied Intuition or whoever, that can get this into a lot of vehicles simultaneously. Like everybody's trying to do this. And I thought what was interesting is like, yeah, we hear about these success cases of Tesla and Waymo, but like the average person has not gotten into a Waymo. Like this isn't propagated out in any real meaningful way yet. And then the other interesting thing while we were talking at lunch is about Tesla and Waymo, which is that Waymo from their perspective, or at least this person we spoke to, their opinion was that Waymo really, while they're the sexy kid on the block that everybody's talking about,
Nobody.
Yeah, the
raised-
sexy
I've
kid.
never heard of the sexy kid on the block.
If Taylor Swift can put it in a lyric, why can't we on the lemonade stand?
There's a Taylor Swift lyric about the sexy
Keep
kid on the
going,
block.
keep going, Doug.
so a Waymo. with huge LiDAR, big curvaceous cameras. It rolls in
And
the screen.
above legal age.
Above age.
Most importantly, the Waymo is
You should have led with that.
They have been developing it for over 18 years. What's interesting is they apparently Waymo is like so expensive and so intense with how they run things. They need to like really, really meticulously map out every single place.
Isn't that what you want though? Like what?
But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just like, isn't that from a consumer POV? Don't I want them to be like spending the money and taking the time and being safe as possible? Like I am agreeing with you that overall self-driving is safer and you want to get it to a lot of cars, but like putting a software in my shitty old Honda, even if it has computers in it, it makes me worry that it's not going to be as safe. That's my worry.
Yes. So, okay. So an important clarification there. All of the self-driving companies are going and mapping places before they go send the car out. Tesla and Elon have like proposed the dream of, you take a Tesla into wherever that has no idea where you are. But all the companies, including Tesla, will use, for example, LiDAR and these other things to go map stuff out.
In like a geofenced area.
Yes. The challenge with what Waymo has done is they are like meticulously building a map that is like, pixel accurate of the entire city that they operate in. And then the reason that they're able to do so well is because they are assuming that their map is accurate. But if the physical city changes in any way, which it does, and suddenly the mapping that they did 6 months ago.
In America, we don't build. So actually, we've planned for this. China's going to have so much new construction, they'll never get it down.
They're falling behind
but
already.
Here in America, we keep it stame for 100 years.
So as appealing as it is, the idea of like, we are going to do this incredibly expensive, detailed mapping system, if you then depend on that and you cannot be as flexible with whatever comes up and whatever changed in the city and whatever, this block is different, this tree fell down, this car, this scaffolding, whatever is different, then that can cause these problems. And so the idea was like what Waymo's doing is extraordinarily successful in its own way, but they are doing a system that is kind of not scalable by default. So it's like cool, but really what you want is a way for this to be accessible to anybody as well as affordable, right? If the idea is here's another way, the thing I've been thinking about. Waymo's really cool, but ultimately they're replacing taxi drivers. What I would like personally is not to replace taxi drivers. What I would like is to replace the average dipshit on the road that can't drive well, right? That's who you want to replace. And so if you can get software like that dramatically reduces average, person's driving faults, that is where the real value lies. And so having a system that can actually scale to multiple places, still, you're going to have mapping in advance. But I think that's like the societal value. To me, coming out of this and just a number of research over the past couple of weeks, I'm less convinced that automating away Uber is like that valuable for society. Sure. I think what's really valuable is, those millions and millions of accidents that happen just in the US, the tens or hundreds of thousands of people that are dying every year. You get the bad drivers into systems that have automatic braking and that are going to drive for them. And that, if they get in the wheel drunk, it's going to drive for them.
Or in the industries where humans just don't want to work in the first place.
Yeah. Or that
fading away.
Another thing is like with mining, it's like, I know mining isn't sexy, but if we don't mine and do it safely and have environmental standards, it goes to other countries. Like there's value in countries like ours being able to do mining operations or construction and not just say, well, everybody's retiring and nobody wants to do the work. We'll just not do it. Like if we want to have a clean energy future, you have to mine and build. Like we need stuff. And if we don't do it, it's going to go to countries that are going to do it in polluting, unsafe ways. For example, famously, it's cobalt, right? That they mine in the Congo with children. It's like, you don't really want that. That's not great.
The kids are going to be out of jobs.
You're taking the cobalt miners' jobs, Doug. These kids love that job. I've seen the movie Minecraft. I agree with you. It's a good point.
Yeah, there's a weird balance going on, and essentially the competition here is with Tesla, not with Waymo, which I was a little bit surprised by.
For them,
yeah, for them, and for other companies that are trying to do this type of thing.
All right, that's enough about automation for this week. We needed to squeeze in a few other stories. What do you guys have?
We don't know yet. Welcome to the future. From last week when we recorded the episode.
Yeah.
But now it's the present right now, although it'll be the past when you're watching this.
Put it down. It's not an ad. You're not
It gives you wind.
That was our field trip episode. We hope you enjoyed. Now, honestly, we've only got a little bit of time left in this episode, and so rather than like dive into half of a news thing, whatever, we're going to give you some quick bites, a little quibby.
Yeah.
Just a little bit of teaser, maybe some stuff we're going to talk about on the Patreon if you are interested in that show, and otherwise, we shall see you more next week. So, Patreon, excuse me. Your name is Brandon. Brandon.
You call me Pig?
Just call him a pig.
I was mixing
pointed
Pig,
at me and said
Patreon,
pig.
and Brandon all simultaneously.
You know, in 2025, Red Bull sold 14
Pigman, what do you got? Quick bite.
Quick bites. I mean, look, there's a lot of news this week. We kind of picked a unfortunate timing for the field trip, so we'll have to cover some of this on the Patreon and Overflow. But obviously, we got, SpaceX hitting 1 trillion, then 2 trillion, then 3 trillion, basically.
How much is Elon Musk worth right now as of this recording?
I think he's like 1.5 or something.
Yeah.
He gained Warren Buffett's net worth in a day. Warren Buffett is the 10th most richest man in the world. That is insane. That is an insane stat. He is a man who's compounded an enormous amount of wealth for 50 years, and he gained it in a day. The SpaceX whole IPO is crazy. We'll have to go into it deeper. There was the U.S. government banning Claude in an overnight.
Yes. So we'll dive into this more on the Patreon because it's a long conversation with a lot of angles to go into. But we've talked a little bit about their new Mythos model, which is the insanely powerful model which is going to break all the cybersecurity. And then they sort of out of nowhere launched it. This would have been 2 weeks ago. It was on June 9th. So about a week ago. And everybody was like, oh my God, it's really powerful. But there were these restrictions on what you could use it for. And then on June 12th, this last Friday, the government sent them a letter. This is from Howard Lutnick, who sent them a letter and said, you need to restrict access of your model to anybody who isn't an American national, including people in America, which is not something you can enforce,
It's
right?
impossible.
It's impossible to enforce. So this is, it's, not only interesting in that Anthropic had to shut down this thing and it implies this sort of intense power of this model. It is also a whole new world we're entering of governments declaring that AIs are dangerous to be used, but nationals, it's a kind of crazy precedent. So there's a lot of weird angles in terms of what this does to Anthropic and their IPO, what the government legality is behind this, what this means for the IPO that Anthropic was trying to do, what it means for every other AI company and how they're going to release models, and whether governments around the world are just going to try to shut it down. It's wild. It's real wild.
Yeah, we'll do a deeper dive on that. And also next week on the main episode, we'll follow up on all these stories. And the last thing I want to say is the Iran war could possibly maybe one time for reals V1 final _ final be over.
What's your over under? Do you think this one sticks?
It genuinely, based on what I've seen, it depends on whether or not Israel does another bombing of Lebanon, which I think they already just did. But they are trying everything they can to stop the peace deal. Israel is openly at this point.
It's the length of Israel's refractory period.
Yeah, I guess between bombings.
Right.
Yeah. It's down to that. That's what it's coming down to. So
Israeli strike kills 4 in southern Lebanon amid ceasefire talks.
This is
1 hour ago.
Isn't that insane? Isn't that insane?
Oh boy!
They're not even high. They're just literally trying to do whatever they can to stop this peace deal from happening. I don't know. I don't know what happens, but this seems like this one is different and may in fact hold because both sides did agree and publicly announced it, which has not happened yet. We'll get into the whole details of the specifics, but that's a story we should follow up on next week because a lot's going to happen between now and then. So, I mean, those are the 3 big topics.
And the
Nordic Fun Fact of the week.
Thank
We
you.
can't do an episode, even the field trip episode, without a Nordic Fun Fact of the week. So, Aiden, please close our show out with by the way, people are becoming fans of this.
Demanding the
You
Nordic
look
Fun
at some
Fact.
of the comments, they're like, I only come here for the Nordic Fun Fact of the week. I'm here.
We have
so it's like,
Nordic people using this as their
that's our news
litmus
source.
to understand what's going on. They're lost without
Dude,
us.
Aiden's
They're
using it in
rudderless.
his immigration application. You said you are putting in your immigration application that you do the Nordic Fun Fact of the week, so you should be given Swedish citizenship.
Yeah. Dude, I'm about this
If
shit.
you're saying
which
a
is, by the
top
way,
Nordic reporter
Yeah.
shouldn't talk about the work that they're doing, the
You're
important
right.
work.
That's what he's. You know what? I want you to get the citizenship, and then I want Sweden to go to hell. I want you to come crawling back.
You know they made $15 billion
This is
in
not.
revenue
I'd
last
rather
year.
do this in the Red Bull segment. What's the Nordic Fun Fact of the week, Aiden?
So Iceland considering joining the European Union and leaving their currency behind for the
What's
first
their currency? Is it the kroner?
the krona.
The kroner.
The kroner. They are taking a vote on August 29th to restart the process of negotiations to join the European Union. They started this a long time ago in 2013 when an initial effort came through to consider this the first time. But basically, inflation is spiking in Iceland, and a lot of people within Iceland see European Union membership as a pathway to getting this under control. So by being more deeply embedded into European trade, you can reduce the costs of the imports and also getting rid of the costs of having a separate currency when those transactions for imports have to occur. So this vote is coming up on August 29th.
The reverse Brexit. The ice center.
It's so weird to call it reverse Brexit because it's just, it's joining the thing.
Yeah, we
Why
have
wouldn't
words for
describe
that
it?
already.
No. You guys are wrong. There's only one word.
The
that's
only
Brexit.
way. So when you do pick up Brexit ball at the
That's right.
at the court.
Yeah, everything's Brexit
You guys
related.
cool if I reverse Brexit in your game?
Yes, I say that.
There's actually so
Why are
many
you
verbs
doing this in a voice? That's how
you
I
can
talk.
use.
Yes.
I would be curious if anyone from Iceland is listening, how much you feel like this is dominating the news cycle in your tiny country.
All 12 of them are.
I to be honest with you, I have not read much about this. Like, I'm trying to read stuff about this right now. I have seen very little news outside of the fact that this vote is happening and that people are weighing the trade-offs specifically of changing the currency after, maintaining their own for so long. So I think it's an interesting story to follow, and we'll find out at the end of August if that process is going to start. And that's it. That's all it is this week. It's really simple and short. And you seem happy.
I guess so. I mean, it's interesting if they join the EU. Because has anyone joined the EU in the past since post-COVID?
I mean, not at the top of my head. I can't. I know that countries have tried to. It wasn't
Join NATO.
Hungary.
Right?
It's like something I want.
Joined
Sweden joined NATO in 2024. So
Hungary joined in 2004. Most recent EU country.
Dude, I
join.
searched it, and then the freaking AI summary said, yes, the EU population's increased, so
Croatia.
people have joined.
There you go. Thank you, AI.
So the last time was Croatia in 2013. So
really? That's been a minute, dude.
I think there's been attempts, right? Like there's been.
You know there's a limited number of countries in Europe, though, right? It was going to stop
They're
at some
always
point.
finding new ones.
I don't think this is a shock that it's slowed
Like,
down.
if you keep digging, you'll find a country in there. Probably a fucking, with 40 population that Aiden wants to cover extensively.
Sorry that I'm not. What do you want me to do? Yeah, let's do the news by population. All of the stories will be about India next week. That's what you've.
That would be kind of hype.
It would be hype.
If we did the news by population,
It
would
would be
become a
hype.
China-India podcast.
I'm actually kind of interested in that.
All right. Next week, we'll do the Mumbai Minute.
You get India, I'll get Indonesia. They're up there.
All right, we'll get all the big ones.
All right. Well,
Guys,
if you want to hear more about those, you can join us for our extra episode we do every week on Patreon, patreon.com/lemonadestand. And would love to hear your thoughts about this specific episode because it was a field trip. We tried something new in both like the format, going to tour an actual facility. Let us know what you thought about it. And we will see you guys in the Patreon episode and on the main episode next week.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody.